Imagine that you've married a Korean guy, someone you fell in love with, someone who promised you the world. You move to his country, start a family, and think you're building life together. But then things start to change, slowly at first, and then all at once. What began as small arguments grow into constant fear. Your spouse's temper becomes unpredictable, his words more cutting, and eventually it escalates to physical violence. You want to leave to protect yourself and your child, but you're not just up against him, you're up against a whole system you don't fully understand. Now he's not just threatening you anymore, he's threatening to take your child away. He tells you that if you try to report him or do anything against him, you will never see your child again. The law is on his side, he says. You feel trapped, terrified, and alone in a country far from home. And this isn't just a story, it's the reality for many foreign women married to Korean men. Domestic abuse is a global issue, but when you add the layers of cultural differences, language barriers, and legal complexities, it becomes a nightmare that's hard to wake up from. Domestic violence is a significant issue in Korea, with about 1 in 4 women reporting it at some point in their lives. For every reported case, many more remain hidden due to fear and stigma. Foreign women face even greater challenges, often isolated by language barriers and uncertain of their rights. From 2013 to 2019, over 21,000 cases of domestic violence involving foreign spouses were reported in Korea, likely just the tip of the iceberg. Then there's the issue of custody. Custody battles can be especially tough for foreign spouses in Korea. They often face language barriers and a legal system that may favor the Korean parent, believing they offer a more stable, culturally familiar environment for the child. It's important to recognize that these struggles aren't limited to one gender or nationality. They affect many families in complex ways. To really show you how serious this issue is, we sat down with a woman named Courtney. She's bravely navigating the challenges of domestic abuse while fighting for her child in a foreign country. Her story is deeply personal, but it's also something that, sadly, many others are going through as well.
I had met him in the US. I had gone to a coin karaoke. These guys approached me outside and said, "Oh, do you want to karaoke with us?" Since it was my birthday, I decided to karaoke with them. A few months to a half a year later, after us officially dating and knowing each other for a year, we ended up getting married. At the beginning of our relationship, he was very charismatic. The first time he met the children, he bought them, toys and brought them to them. We would go on vacations together. We would go to Oido, Incheon, things like that together. So he seemed like he really cared about the children and me. If I'm gonna get married again, this seems like a person that I can trust and I really care about. I'll give it a shot. Worst case, I can move out of the apartment. I never expected, things could take such a drastic turn with everything, so.
Courtney's story begins like many others, full of hope and love. But beneath the surface, troubling signs began to emerge, ones that would lead to a nightmare she never anticipated.
I really noticed his attitude started to shift a lot after I got pregnant. And then it got to the point where anything that I didn't agree with him on, he would say, "I'm gonna kick you out of the house. I'm gonna kick you and the kids out of the house."
Fuck you, just go out.
I'm not doing anything right now.
Just go out, I don't wanna see you.
You're gonna lose your visa. I'm gonna make a false police report against you saying, you hit me or something. And he would call the police sometimes just saying, "Oh, am I legally allowed to kick her out of the house?" with no reason. And they said no. So he would make a reason, and he would call them trying to cause some kind of problem.
The abuse wasn't just verbal, it turned physical, with Courtney bearing the brunt of her partner's anger. Even while heavily pregnant, she was subjected to violence that endangered both her life and the life of her unborn child.
It was when I was 32 weeks pregnant. So he came home, throwing divorce papers in front of me. you know, I'll consider this later, but I need you to calm down. Right now I have the girls in the room with me. They don't need to see this. He started to like keep pushing the paper on me and, you know, yelling in my face. The girls are behind me on the bed. So I ended up locking the bedroom door and, you know, going about what I was doing. There was about a 20-25 minute video of him banging on the door, screaming in Korean, "I'm gonna kill you."
야, 열어, 씨발놈아. 죽여버릴 거야, 너. 열라고.
Stop! "I'm really gonna kill you. I'm sorry. I'm gonna make you, you know, meet your mother." My mother had died that July of that year, and, you know, hearing that from the person who was there for you, you know, pretending to comfort you when your mother died, and then, you know, ever since then she's been a punchline, you know, "Ha, your mother died. You don't have a mother," or, you know, "I'm gonna send you to your mother now." I was kind of naive. I opened the door. Next thing I know, the door hits my nose. It left a big bruise there, and he comes in and he just starts pushing me towards the window and the wall. You know, he had slapped me. My daughters were there, and I grabbed the shower hose and I said, "Please stay away from me. Stay away from me." And he grabs it from me, turns it on, and he just drenches me in water. He just starts forcibly removing my pants, and I just remember feeling, you know, really, really gross and, you know, really like ashamed of myself that my kids are seeing this. And I don't have my phone. I don't know where it is at this time. So I put on some other pants, and then when he turns around, I run and open the door in my bra, my pants. That's when I really started cramping up, and he wouldn't give me my phone. He's telling the girls, "Mommy's just playing a game. It's just a game, you know, this isn't real." And I kept telling my daughters, "Please come out of the door. Please come with Mommy. I can't leave you here." I finally, you know, just think either I'm gonna get killed here today or my daughters are gonna get hurt while I'm gone. But I bolted to, you know, the local convenience store. I dropped to the floor when I get in there, and she just goes, "Oh my gosh, what happened?" And I said, "Please call the police. You know, I don't have my phone." And she, you know, was nice. She covered me in her jacket. She called the police. And when they arrived, I said, "Bring my daughters to me and my phone. He has that, please." And at that time, my stomach really, really was to the point where I knew something was wrong. They asked me, "Do you want to go to the hospital?" I said, "Yes, I do." And they took me to my local pregnancy hospital where my doctor was. They basically said, "You know, you're having early labor contractions. I was really scared. You know, your baby's trying to come out right now. We have to give you anti-contraction medicines for the next 3 days or so that he's not born early." I was, you know, not far enough along to have the baby yet. I'm in there for a day and a half, and that's when they start telling me how expensive these medications are. And I said, "I don't have that kind of money." And then I get scared because you can't leave the hospital if you don't have the money to pay. And the nurses contacted him for, you know, the whole day. He told them and me, "That's not my problem. I'm not giving a cent to you and the baby. I don't care if you're stuck in there. That's not my problem."
Even after giving birth, when he got aggressive, he didn't care that she was holding their baby. He'd shove her against the wall and choke her, saying he wished she'd just die. Even though the signs were clear, no one helped, not even her mother-in-law, who'd you think would step in, but she just looked the other way.
I knocked on her door. I said, "I need to talk to you. You know, your son keeps doing this." She already knew. When she picked her grandson up, there was a mark on my neck, and she basically said, like, "Did you do anything to make him do it?" "Well, that's not like him. Did you do anything to make him do it?" And I remember, you know, just sitting at their table like this that night, trying to cry but not show them, because I was afraid, oh, I'm with these people. What is their family like if he thinks this is normal? What if they don't let me leave the house with the baby?
And her concerns became reality. To kick her out of the house and take their son away from her, she says her husband set her up to make it look like she was trying to kidnap their son. He'd tell her it was fine to take the kids to school, but then secretly record her and call the police, lying that she was running away. Despite having proof she was just doing the school run, the police always sided with him. On May 1st, things got worse. He threatened to accuse her of child abuse, provoked her while recording, and even yanked her collar as she held their son, almost making her fall.
"You're not taking my son. Hey, look at this.
In self-defense, she slapped him, but he exaggerated it for the camera he was secretly filming. When the police arrived, he played the victim, pretending she was the abuser. And that was all part of his plan, to set up what would happen next to her and their child.
They wrapped their arms around him, and he just started shaking and pretending to cry about me hitting him and acting like I had been the abusive partner. He basically said, I have everything I need now to get a divorce. You're not gonna have the baby for too long, but watch the baby for the day. After I went to work, I went to the police station. I said, I really want to go to a shelter. I don't feel safe in my home. The police officer involved, I don't remember his name, but he brought 2 family violence counselors into the police station. I had gone there with just, my son alone. The 2 ladies come, we sit on a sofa just in, one of those talking rooms. At that time, I was kind of struggling with holding the baby and everything. So the other counselor had offered, to take my son off my hands and just hold him for me. Next thing I know, I look over and she's going out the door, and I had this eerie feeling, but I didn't really know what had happened until I walked out from talking with the other counselor. She had handed my son over to my mother-in-law, my husband was there, and she starts moving my stuff out of the stroller and darting to the elevator to leave. He cannot go with them. I said this, between 5 to 7 times. I said, if he goes with them, they're not gonna return him. I have this bad feeling. And the officer, I just look over at him and he's just kind of sitting there listening to the whole conversation, not doing anything. My husband, is blocking me from reaching out for the baby. And finally, I run out of options. So, I'm looking at my mother-in-law saying, please don't do this, please don't do this. And, I got down on the ground and I literally begged for them not to take my son. And my mother-in-law finally did get out on the elevator. But that day when I got home, I noticed all my husband's clothes were gone. 90% of the baby stuff was gone. The police said, there's nothing we can do. It's not illegal in Korea. The other parent can take their child somewhere else. And they told me all the same thing. They said, you need a lawyer. That's the only way in Korea, you can get your child back if they're taken by the other parent, is to get a lawyer and to do it through the law.
She feels like being a foreigner really messed up how the police handled her case. When she reported the abuse, they often brushed her off, asking why she was even filing complaints and telling her not to bother. They were unprofessional, even laughing about her translator being too old, and they ignored her repeated requests to extend a restraining order, which ended up getting her kicked out of her own house. When her lawyer finally got involved, the officer claimed he hadn't received any of her calls or messages, clearly just ignoring her. Recently, the police started threatening her to take down videos she posted online about her situation, even though she made sure not to show any identifying details. Instead of addressing her concerns professionally, they took a threatening tone, demanding she remove the content and asking for her address in a way that felt really menacing. The system seemed to care less about the mother-child bond. Overall, the people and systems meant to support her completely let her down, leaving her feeling alone and powerless.
I have not seen my son since May 1st. I'm sorry. I'm just, my husband, the whole time we, were expecting the baby, he, tried to push me to get rid of the baby many times. I wanted my son so bad. I have so many questions, but I just wish, people here would stop treating children as property and, try to treat both the child involved and the parents involved as, human beings. It's just, when I talked to the police and I said, well, what if I had been breastfeeding? They said, oh, well, you would have had to file a form for that, I guess. You would have had to file a form to send milk or something. We can't help you there. That was their response. I got to the point where I stopped trusting people so much and I just had a lack of love towards people after this and seeing how inhumane it can be, that I would just put in headphones with no music and just walk outside, get my coffee, go right back in for the day and maybe take a walk at night. But I was just crying every day, every day for a good month. And it got to the point where once the lawyers got really involved in it, I was just like, I can't keep crying every day about it. It's not gonna get better if I keep being emotional about it. And unless it's for the case, I don't look at photos of my son anymore because If I did, I think it would just make me, too emotional. I'm just trying to think that my son needs me, and what would, a 15, 16, 18-year-old or adult, version of my son feel like if his mother let her emotions ruin the case and him not get to have a mother growing up. So, but when I really sit down and think about it, it's hard, I'm never gonna get this time back. I'm never gonna get that bonding time. I'm never gonna get that time that I waited 9 months for as a mother. And when I talk to other people about it, they don't care,
Courtney's story is not unique. Many foreign spouses face similar battles, struggling against a system that often feels indifferent to their plight. In the last 2 weeks alone, she's had 10 to 15 parents reach out, saying they're either being threatened by their Korean spouse or in-laws that their child will be taken away if they report the abuse, or they've already lost custody. Some of these parents haven't seen their newborns or young children for months. She explains that Korea's legal system doesn't have adequate protections for parental rights during marriage, and once a child is taken, it's very difficult to get them back. Many parents are too scared to speak up because of defamation laws, and when they do call the police, the authorities often just tell the Korean spouse to handle it, only for the abuse to continue. Family issues like parental abduction are often brushed off as private matters, leaving many foreign parents feeling helpless.
All of these people that are reaching out to me, they're very scared. They don't know what to do. And they can't really go back to their home countries because in my case, I tried to reach out to my embassy. I tried to see if I could get a passport for my son, something originally before this had all happened. And without the other parent's signature, it's not possible. You can't even leave the country to go back to where the laws you're used to without having that signature. So essentially these spouses get stuck here, they get wrung back into the abuse, and then they're left with no help from resources. 90% of US states nowadays are 50-50 custody states. So unless one parent, has a drug issue, has an inhabilitating issue that would keep them from parenting correctly, as long as they don't pose a threat to the children involved and they're not abusive to the children, then they will still do 50-50 parenting. They want to prioritize that the children are getting to see both parents in the situation. So I think that's something that Korea really does need to fix, because they're not really focusing on the fact that a child's identity is built from having both parents in their lives.
She's now getting legal help thanks to the generosity of people who donated through a GoFundMe campaign, which was set up by relatives in the US. And without that support, she wouldn't have been able to afford a lawyer. Initially, she had very little money, barely enough for food or a hotel after being kicked out of her house with her kids, and she was struggling emotionally. We spoke to her lawyer, and he says in Korea, it's not automatically considered kidnapping if a parent takes their child without the other parent's permission. It depends on why they did it and whether it harms the other parent's rights or the child's well-being. Now, if Courtney wants to get her child back, her best bet is to fight for custody through the divorce. However, this won't be easy because courts usually prefer to keep things as stable as possible for the child, and the child is now living with the father. Plus, Courtney doesn't have much support in Korea, like family or financial resources, which makes things tougher. But she does have some things in her favor, like the fact that she's been the primary caregiver and there's a history of domestic violence from her husband. Courtney's case is far from over. Her case highlights the need for reform and better support for those caught in the crosshairs of domestic abuse and legal battles in a foreign land.
At first, when this all started, I mostly started it because I, just wanted my son back. But, the more people that messaged me going through similar, incidents with their children, I just thought I would rather have it have a good impact on people and motivate change. Maybe a reform in the law, maybe it gets brought to the public's attention how common this is. You see campaigns such as the one in Busan going on, where the government, due to the birth rate, is actually promoting these intercultural marriages, and they're wanting and paying money for these foreign spouses to come in and have children and, raise them here to help this birth rate. But then yet, when we're actually trying to protect those children, when we're trying to live here they just strip us of that. They don't, provide the resources we need. They don't help. They don't take us seriously. And I have to say, going through all this, I felt, less than human, experience that. I hope no one ever has to go through that.
In a world where borders and laws can divide, the fight for family and justice continues. This is one mother's story, but it echoes the struggles of many. Courtney's story shows how important it is for us to come together and support those who need it. Change starts with awareness, and by sharing her journey, we can help make a difference. We truly hope she gets her son back, and we encourage everyone to help and support her in any way they can. Let's stand by those facing similar battles and work towards a future where everyone gets the support and respect they deserve. That is all for today. Thanks for watching.